Hello and welcome to this video on dialogue, the power of the spoken word. Exciting times. So when it comes to writing, dialogue can be a huge part of making or breaking good writing. So let's take a look. Really, the definition of dialogue is a narrative conveyed through speech by two or more characters. That's kind of the definition. But there's a lot more to it than just that. And to quote somebody else, the purpose of dialogue. Effective dialogue should do many things at once, not simply convey information. Okay, well, if it should do many things at once, what should it do? It should set the scene, advance action, give insight to each of the characters, and foreshadow future dramatic action. There's a lot of stuff we can pack into dialogue, and it makes it more interesting to read. There's a source right there if you want to learn more about this concept. So, I thought to demonstrate this, I would give an example from the book Bring Down the Rain, and I know the author fairly well. I would say very well. So I feel okay by showing you something that I wrote and then showing how it can be written without dialogue and helping you see the example. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look. So to set up this scene, the main character Derek, he is, this is about halfway through the book or so. He is a senior in high school who moved from North Carolina to Utah for his senior year. He has been dating this girl named Tiffany, and he has kind of had an argument. There was a school dance, and they had an argument with one of the guys at school. And Derek kind of lost his temper at this guy and ended up storming out of the gym into the kind of the cold wintry night. And he's pretty upset. Okay. And so this is the scene. Okay. So Tiffany, who's his girlfriend, followed him out and was kind of trying to calm him down. And he says, oops, I forgot the open quotation marks there. Oh well. I don't get you sometimes, Tiff, I said. How can you be so nice like all the time? She gave a little laugh. Because I choose to be. It's not that easy, I said. Isn't it? I turned my head and looked down at her. I once lost my temper while I was on a date with my ex. It was over something stupid. I don't remember what it was. She got all weirded out and told me, now I've seen the real you. It really bugged me. I've always had a temper according to my mom and dad, but I try to keep it under control. But who am I? But am I just pretending? Is the angry guy you saw tonight really who I am and I'm just faking it most of the time? Tiffany didn't say anything for a moment. I thought for sure I'd freaked her out. Instead, when she finally spoke, she said, the nice guy you showed me and Mr. Angry we saw tonight are both you. Like sort of Jekyll and Hyde thing? Not really. More like different sides of the same coin. That's not very comforting, I said. I don't like the angry me. I can't say I'm a big fan either. She snuggled up a bit closer. I blew out a deep breath, creating a plume of steam into the cold air. Any suggestions on how to keep Mr. Angry away? Yes, she said. Make the choice. Alright, so there's a lot of dialogue that happens here, and we're going to kind of break down some of the concepts of dialogue tags and stuff. But a lot of information is conveyed with what's being said, but it's not only just dialogue. There is moments of narrative here that is kind of interdispersed, and we'll kind of look at that in just a second. Now, let's look at this same exact scene written without dialogue. Okay? After arguing with Gary, I stormed outside the gym. I was mad. More than that, I acted that way in front of Tiffany. I was sure she was going to dump me now. Something similar happened with my ex-girlfriend. I had gotten upset, and she had said now she had seen the real me. How could Tiffany be so nice all the time? I didn't like getting angry. It was something I'd had a problem with all my life. Tiffany followed me out of the gym. She told me everything was going to be okay. So that's the same exact, basically, information, the same thing that happened, but this is definitely kind of not this, I would say it's interesting to read. It doesn't really have any dialogue, and we're really missing out on an opportunity to develop the characters, to develop the scene, to kind of the fact that, you know, as far as the foreshadowing, so now we know that, you know, Derek has this side of him that he doesn't like. He doesn't like when he gets upset. Okay, is that going to play a role later on in the book? Maybe. So there's all sorts of information that we could have put in, but we kind of summarized it here, and actually it kind of shortened this. And I would say, personally, reading dialogue makes it more interesting. Now, when it comes to dialogue, there's something else we want to talk about, and that is dialogue tags. Okay, so dialogue tag. What does that even mean? Okay, well, the purpose of a dialogue tag, and this is again information that I got from an outside source, they're phrases like he said or she asked. They attribute a line of dialogue to one or other of the characters, so the reader hopefully always knows who is speaking. That's the whole purpose of a dialogue tag. Who is speaking? Who is saying what? Now, when it comes to dialogue tags, there's all sorts of different philosophies, and we're going to look at some examples next of what works, what doesn't work, what could work. And keep in mind that the rules of dialogue tags kind of come and go out of favor depending on who you ask. As writing develops and changes over time, there are certain fads that kind of go in, certain things that were written in the past that don't really work now, and so on. So we're going to look at a few of these. So how much is too much when it comes to dialogue tags? So we're going to look at this little scene between two characters, and I've written it several different ways to show you how the difference of dialogue tags can make and what works and what doesn't work and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to the store, Jerry said. Pick up a tin of Spam, George said. A tin? Jerry asked. You mean a can? Cans are round. Tins are rectangular, George said. Says who? Jerry asked. Says everyone, George said. A lot you know, Jerry said. More than you, George said. Okay, for a few things. Let's talk about, first of all, which should come first, the said or the character? Well, it kind of depends on who you ask. Okay? Personally, my personal feeling is that the word said is basically an invisible word, meaning it is conveying information to the reader, saying that this is a dialogue, it's part of the dialogue tag, but the most important information is not that they said it, but who said it. So therefore, my philosophy is that the character should come first, and then the dialogue tag, a little said or asked or whatever, because we want to know who is speaking, and then our mind just kind of blanks out the word said. That's one thing. But another thing I want you to notice here is we have a dialogue tag for every single bit of dialogue. Yeah, you don't really need that. Okay, so let's look at it again and compare it to this way. I'm going to the store, Jerry said. Pick up a tin of Spam, George said. A tin? You mean a can? Cans are round, tins are rectangular. Says who? Says everyone. A lot you know, more than you. We've established basically we're having a conversation between two characters, and really if it's written properly, we don't need to state for every single dialogue who's speaking because it should be fairly clear. Okay? So we really know that who's speaking here, and sometimes, again, if you go back to this one, this is too much. Too much. It bogs down because we don't need to do it for every single line. You really only need a dialogue tag to clarify who is speaking at any given time, and then the conversation can go on from there. All right. Now, let's take a look at some other examples that people do with dialogue tags. All right, so does this work? Well, let's just read it and then we'll talk about it. I'm going to the store, declared Jerry. Pick up a tin of Spam, requested George. A tin? Jerry inquired. You mean a can? Cans are round, tins are rectangular, stated George. Says who? Implored Jerry. Says everyone, announced George. A lot you know, vocalized Jerry. More than you, pronounced George. Okay. Does this make your writing more interesting? Declared, requested, inquired, stated, implored, announced, vocalized, pronounced. Modern day writing, not really, okay? Honestly, that's it's actually considered lazy writing. Using these extra words here, okay? Because a tin, Jerry inquired. Well, it's a question. You know that he's inquiring it. You mean a can? Do you really need to have this? That's a little redundant, okay? And again, you're saying, oh, well, it's kind of helping announce, well, sometimes we can use these, maybe sparingly, but this is way too much. Okay, so what about using adverbs? We are using dialogue tags. Okay, hang on. Let's look at this. I'm going to the store, said Jerry dramatically. Pick up a tin of Spam, said George imploringly. A tin? Jerry asked inquisitively. You mean a can? Cans are round. Tins are rectangular, said George matter-of-factly. Says who? Asked Jerry frustratedly. Says everyone, said George authoritatively. A lot you know. Oops. A lot you know, said Jerry dismissively. More than you, said George angrily. Okay. Again, way too much. Way too much. The idea of using these adverbs, again, adverbs generally end with ly. Yeah, I mean, they can help clarify and whatever, but again, this is too much. Should you use these? Modern day writing says not really, okay? You should be able to kind of get the sense of how people are feeling in different ways, okay? So remember this concept of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. How much do you want to use? The answer is just right. Just the right amount, okay? Goldilocks is looking for that perfect bed, that perfect bowl of pottage or whatever, okay? Not something that's too hard or too soft, just right. So let's look at this scene written a different way, okay? This is where we add a little narration along into it. I'm going to the store, Jerry said. He reached for his coat. Not looking up from his Nintendo Switch, George said, pick up a tin of Spam. A tin? You mean a can? Cans are round, tins are rectangular. Says who? George sighed. He set down the game controller. Says everyone. A lot you know. More than you. George waved his hand dismissively and went back to playing his game. So here we have the same conversation, but we've added a little narration, and it indicates something. Okay, so he reached for his coat. So the fact that Jerry is leaving to go to the store, and he's having to reach for his coat, means it's either wet or rainy or cold or something. And so it's more of an inconvenience to go it's not like he's just popping down to get something. So he's making an effort to go somewhere. And George, who's just sitting there playing a video game, who can't even really be bothered, is making a request that's, above and beyond the fact that Jerry's going to go do something. And then they're kind of arguing about what you should call it, a tin or a can, right? And basically George, who's just like, whatever, he just wants, so again, this kind of establishes more of the characters and the setting and stuff like that. And that's a way that you can kind of integrate both of them. So, some final thoughts on dialogue are it can really make or break good writing. And, one thing that's very intimidating to a reader is when you see just a huge block of text. Narration is great, but dialogue can help with the pacing. It can do a lot for you, but it can't do everything for you. There has to be a good balance. And if you can do that and do that well, then you will be able to write well. And there you go.